So once again with this painting we have a founder member of Toledo's Tile Club and one of the organisers of the Toledo Museum of Art. This is Thomas Shrewsbury Parkhurst's coastal scene. It's called Evening Glow, but it's Carmel, California. And Parkhurst was a terrific artist, able to create paintings as here of rugged cliffs and a rocky shore, the crashing ocean waves, all these diagonal compositional lines creating intense and sharp contrasting colours, and what is quite an ominous mood in the painting. Now Parkhurst was from Manchester in England, and he was born to parents who emigrated to the United States of America in the 1850s, settling first in upstate New York. But when he was 16, a teenager, Thomas decided to make Toledo, Ohio, his home. His successful career helped to establish Toledo as an art city, and it all began with the founding in Toledo of the Draconian Club, which was the city's first club. And it was proposed by David Locke, then editor of the Blade. In 1889, the name was changed to the Toledo Club. And members of the founding group included the great glass leader in industry, Edward Drummond Libby, John North Willies, Michael Joseph Owens, and the Chief Justice of the US Supreme Court, Morrison Waite. Now, all their portraits are on the next floor in the founder's room. Parkhurst, however, he began exhibiting his oils and watercolors in the area of Ohio and Michigan and India, and gained a considerable fame. He was also one of the founder members, as I said, of the Tile Club, which was an extraordinary gathering of people, including, for example, the architect David Stein, who designed many of the homes in Toledo's Old West End, which, for those who don't know it, is one of the most extraordinary groups of architectural masterpieces this side of the Mississippi. Parkhurst had 35 years working in a decorating business with his partner George Allen, and finally decided to retire to Carmel, California. So this is a late painting by Parkhurst. In 1922, he came back to the Toledo Museum of Art, where they had an exhibition of 50 of his paintings. And he made a last visit to Toledo from California in 1923, dying in Carmel by the sea. But he was buried beside his wife Flora in Woodlawn Cemetery, the great historic cemetery of Toledo, Ohio. Again, well worth a visit for those who don't know it. Beside the Parkhurst here, we have a painting by Max Kuhn. He has been called a Renaissance man, able to do so many different things. Somebody said of him, I'm a carpenter, a designer, a painter, and a gilder. And you'll notice with some of these paintings, they have elaborate frames. Kuhn was born in Germany in 1880, but his family moved to New York. And as a young man, he actually decided to be a dental laboratory assistant, a patent law clerk, a printer, but any job always ended by the time summer came around. And so Max and his younger brother, they joined a boat club, they took part in many rowing events, and he won a lot of gold medals racing bicycles as well. So you can see the type of character. It was when he was 27, he decided to study art and began his training with masters like William Merritt Chase, and also went to night school with the great artist of the Ashcan School, Robert Henry. He returned to New York in 1911, and a year later he went to Gloucester in Massachusetts and took to painting the picturesque fishing town and all around it, and eventually established a studio at Rockport. He visited Spain for the first time in 1914 and fell in love not only with its landscapes but with a German woman who would become his wife. He became one of the great landscape artists, but he survived the Great Depression, as many artists had to do, by taking on other jobs, so whether it was decorating screens or panels or sculptures. His frames were much sought after in their own right, and Kuhn died at the age of 88 in New York City. The painting here is rather reminiscent of works of American artists, the bridges of Bellows perhaps being an inspiration, but also very much, the Pont du Gard and other great structures from France, and the works of the Impressionists. And the way that the paint is dabbed on here, for example, with the palette knife in the bottom right, and the sort of gestures of details make this one of the most loved paintings here in the Toledo Club. Toledo, Ohio is celebrated as a great place for birders and hunters, and in May of every year, more recently, it has become known as the site for the biggest week in American birding. And perhaps the most significant bird painter in America, but certainly from this area, is Harold Rowe, who passed away in 2018, but was a long-time member of the Toledo Club. He was an architect as well as a naturalist. He was a veteran of the Navy, but he traveled all over the world looking at birds. He was a celebrated draftsman of architectural buildings, extraordinary draftsman, but he started making drawings and then paintings of birds, and that became his total passion. He was the four-time winner of the Ohio Duck Stamp competition, which is, of course, very important for conservancy in America, and also of the Ohio Wetlands Stamp competition. He was celebrated here at the Toledo Club, known all over the country, in 2009 with a special wild game dinner in his honor, and this work was given to the club. And copies were made of us in Giclée, generating funds for the club as well. Many artists aspired to having their work shown at the Toledo Club, and the 1970s was somewhat of a heyday for the acquisition of works of art by the club. This is a very striking landscape with surging waves over rocky outcrops, and it's called the surging tide. The artist who painted is George Dinko. And Dinko was a Toledo artist who painted in the 1920s and 1930s, but also known for his New England landscapes. He was born in 1890 of German parents, but they immigrated to the States and settled in Cincinnati. So we've heard this story about quite a number of artists in the Toledo Club connection. He traveled very widely in Europe, Germany, France, England, Italy, and established a reputation as a significant artist. He established a studio in Lake Erie, just about 10 miles from Toledo, but to earn a living at that stage, he had to take on work as a sign painter. This work is representative of the effort that was made by the Toledo Club to acquire works of artists strongly associated with Toledo. And the art committee, led by distinguished people over the years, Carl Stalin, Spence Stone, and many others, has been responsible for this rather lovely collection, which appropriately celebrates connections with Toledo in the Toledo Club. Just outside the ladies' room in the Toledo Club is Henri Rondel's Lady with a Red Rose. This is a painting that's somewhat of a mystery as to how it was acquired. Rondel was born in Avignon in France, a great famous papal city, and studied art under the Orientalist painter Jean-Léon Gérôme. So this is a work very much in the academic tradition, but he was a fashionable society portraitist. But this is clearly a painting of somebody representing very realistically, but also physically, an idealized realism, perhaps, if that's not a conflict, and the beautiful fair skin of the woman married against her hair, Titian red, and her pale shoulders makes this a favorite. And so the whole question of a men's club having nudity may have resonances today, but this has been a much loved painting for many years.